Finance Commissioner Pierre Moscovici on Thursday, the 3rd of May, brushed aside concerns about a slowing down in the EU economic recovery. "The lights are flashing green," he told reporters while presenting the European Commission's latest forecasts. The EU is registering its fastest growth in a decade. Photo, European Commission. According to the EU executive, the EU economy will grow by 2.3% this year and 2.0% in 2019, after the 2.4% growth recorded in 2017, the best performance in a decade. Unemployment is reaching a 10-year low, at 7.6% in 2017, 7.1% in 2018 and 6.7% in 2019, and the number of people with a job is the highest in 20 years. And for the first time in the Eurozone's history, no country will have a deficit over 3% of GDP. The European economy is in really good shape, Moscovici insisted, adding that it is going through a phase of solid and well-established expansion. On Wednesday, the latest Eurostat figures showed that EU economy grew more slowly during the first 3 months of this year than at the end of last year, 0.4% compared to 0.7%. "The first quarter doesn't change our outlook," Moscovici said. He noted that the slower pace is due to a number of temporary factors, such as a colder winter that had an impact on consumption. "It's important not to put too much emphasis on temporary figures," opined Cinzia LCD, the head of economic policy unit at the SEPS think tank in Brussels. LCD told you observer that, like Moscovici, she would keep a certain optimism about the EU economic prospects. "There can be movements of ups and downs, but we're in a phase of growth," she said, adding that results from the next 2 or 3 quarters of the year would be needed to see if some risks are materialized. Dangerous U.S. nexus. Last week, European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi noted some moderation in EU growth and warned of risks related to global factors, including the threat of increased protectionism. On Thursday, Moscovici conceded that "we have not moved from a black situation to a rosy situation, and that downside risks have clearly increased and must be closely watched." He mainly pointed at U.S. tax and trade policies, which he said were a dangerous nexus. EU growth is largely driven by trade, LCD noted, pointing at a potential vulnerability. But the 2 EU officials were careful not to squash optimism over the economic situation. "There is a fear that every time there is a comment, there is a reaction from the markets," LCD noted. "Memories from the crisis are still marked in the minds." She said that the issue was more sensitive for the ECB, because it is preparing to end the quantitative easing (QE) program of asset purchases to boost the economy. "Looking at the growth and inflation figures," she said, "there is a limited reason for QE to continue to exist," she said, adding that she did not expect a strong effect of monetary policies on EU growth. Looking ahead, Moscovici called on EU member states to continue making efforts. "We have to make sure we have the capacity to use macroeconomic policies in the future," he said. "No reform expectations, we need to continue to reduce debt, we need an ambitious push to complete the economic and monetary union," he added. German reluctance towards a deposit insurance scheme and more risk-sharing within the Eurozone. EU leaders are however unlikely to take groundbreaking decisions at their June summit. "It's not ideal in the long term, but I would not expect consequences, because expectations of economic actors will not be high," LCD said. She argued that there was more interest for the next EU budget, which the European Commission proposed on Wednesday, than for Eurozone reform plans. But she noted that it's quite unclear if there are big changes or more a continuation of existing trends, like the decrease of the cohesion and agriculture budgets.